We're at the Charity Learning Consortium in London, and I'm with Clive Shepherd, who's been chairing the conference today. Clive, just got a couple of questions for you. Firstly, just your brief overview of what you've heard so far.
Well, I think the day has been very much focused on change, and in particular change towards more informal and social forms of learning, and that is very much the theme you'll find at conferences over the last 2 or 3 years. One of the things, and it's quite right that should be the case, because after all, social media has so transformed our personal lives outside work that it would be extraordinary if we weren't able to harness some of those same benefits inside the workplace. Just simple things like being able to search for information, being able to find out how to do things by watching videos, and to communicate and ask questions from our peers. That's just routine practice outside work. One of the things which I sort of have noticed on quite a few conferences, though, in watching people's reactions to social people challenging them to make better use of social learning, is that often people look pretty glum and a little bit I don't know, just a little bit intimidated or defiant even in some cases, because I think that in practice the real issue that everyone's worried about at the moment in learning development is can I possibly keep my job, and in what are going to be very, very difficult times, and how can I possibly continue to make learning happen in our organisation with far fewer resources. And as we heard today, it's quite likely that could be the case for the next 10 years before any sort of new bubble starts to inflate. So we've got to get pretty well used to it. We can't just sit around and wait for the fact that everything is going to come back in a couple of years. And I think that for many people, using social media at work seems for them an almost impossible thing to realise, because of the fact that there's so many cultural obstacles, so many priorities which seem to would get in the way of that. And in practice, there's actually some very much more pragmatic and straightforward things that people have got to do what they do now differently, in terms of using, for example, we're hearing there are people already saying how they're going to make much bigger use of virtual classrooms, for example, and forms of e-content. But in practice, when you've got in the long run, we have got to try to bring on board the ideas about social learning, because if we are going to be cut down to the bone with a very, very lean learning development department, we can't any longer pretend that we're going to be the people who actually deliver learning. We haven't got anywhere near the number of resources. Even if it's e-learning, we're not going to have the resources to make that either. So if we can't find a way of getting sharing to take place in organisations and people to help to teach each other, we're never going to be able to meet the need. And I think people are willing to embrace that vision of the future. If you were to ask individual employees, they'd be willing to embrace it. But organisations have no experience of this. Learning development managers would be very nervous of it. They're very nervous about giving up control. So I think there's a lot of very anxious people in learning development at the moment, and that sort of means that people don't seem quite as happy at conferences as they might have seen in the past. But on the other hand, that's not surprising. This is a very tense time. People are concerned about their futures. They're concerned, even if they've got a future inside learning development, they're concerned about how to make these changes. So I think that I've answered my question, is why are people looking glum? I think it's because people are understandably anxious, and I think I would be too. Making change happen is not going to be easy, and I think that Nigel Payne said this afternoon, there's only one way to approach this, which is make change happen together, take small steps, and proclaim your successes, but be prepared to keep trying, and bit by bit you will actually get there. After all, that's what happened in BT and other organisations we heard about this morning. They started small and they gradually built from there. So I think that there are some lessons to be learned from today.
Thought-provoking points there from Clive Shepherd. Thanks very much, Clive.
Okay, no problem.